Switching from architecture to other disciplines is something that a lot of people consider at the end of their architecture education. There are lots of reasons for this shift among architects, but one of the main factors of switching to other careers is the opportunity to earn more money while having less liability compared to being an architect. There are many architecture students and graduates who are considering to switch to UI and UX design in the recent years, and there are some good reasons for this decision. But also there are downfalls as well to this, like any other decisions in life. Is switching to UI and UX design from architecture going to let you earn more money? Will you have less stressful life? Will you be more creative and more in charge of the design outcome? How much effort you have to put in place to be able to switch successfully? And how would you enter UI UX field from architecture? These are the questions that I will be answering by the end of this video, so stick around until the end of the video so that you don't miss any of the points of this conversation. Having spoken to those who have already shifted to UI and UX field while also carrying out some deep research into this topic, I will be assessing the downfalls and pros of this decision and let you decide if this shift is going to work for you or not. Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. If you don't know me, my name is Amir and I'm a Master of Architecture graduate based in London, and in this channel I talk about different approaches towards architecture and design, whether it is shifting career or working towards a new dimension of architecture such as designing in metaverse and using artificial intelligence in architectural design on a weekly basis. As we discussed earlier in this video, I want to share with you the conclusion of my research and conversation with ex-architects and new UI UX designers about the switch from architecture to UI and UX design. And I want to divide this video into 5 sections where I talk about what UI and UX design generally is, what are the commonalities between architecture and UI UX, what do you need to learn if you want to shift to UI UX from architecture, how would you approach a UI UX job, and how much you are likely to make as a UI and UX designer compared to architecture. Now let's talk about what UI and UX design generally is and what do you have to do as a UI and UX designer. First of all, it's important to know that UX stands for user experience and UI stands for user interface. UX designers are responsible for creating an optimal experience for the users when they interact with a digital or a physical product, such as a website, an app, or a ticket machine. Their job sometimes also includes service design as well, such as designing the experience of buying a train ticket or booking a doctor's appointment. Their main method of carrying out such design tasks are first to study the users and understanding their behavior in order to design a compatible journey for them. In order to do that, UX designers' main activities at work include conducting user research, creating user personas, designing user flows and wireframe, creating prototypes, and testing the product on real users. UI designers, however, are responsible for the user interface design for a digital product and the way in which users would interact with them. This includes designing the way the product looks and feels, color palettes, fonts, buttons, layout, and any graphical features of a digital product. However, the goal of the UI designer is to virtually guide the user through the product's interface in an intuitive way, where the users would find their way around the product by not having to constantly provide guidance to help them on their journey. Some of the day-to-day activities of a UI designer include designing the way users interact with the product and work closely with UX designers to make sure the user journey reflects the UX team product vision, carrying out customer analysis, design research, branding and graphics development, prototyping and designing animations. Now let's talk about the commonalities between architecture and UI UX design. The first commonality of architecture and UI UX design is in the process. In designing architecture, we start with the analysis of the brief and the users of the space that we want to design for. This is then followed by designing the way in which users should interact with other spaces based on the brief. After this, We usually design the spaces in terms of aesthetics and features, which will then be followed by construction of the actual space. Now, a very similar process is used in UI UX design, but the whole process starts with a major research and then is followed by designing the user experience, graphics and interface, and finally ends with the development of the actual product. The other commonality of these two disciplines lies in the way they both practice visualizing the ideas. In architecture, we use 3D models and physical models, renders and sketches to demonstrate our ideas to a client. And in UI UX design, very similar methods are used to visualize ideas, such as creating wireframe models, MVPs or minimum viable products, as well as sketches of how the product might look like. Commonality number 3, among many other commonalities between architecture and UI UX design, is the fact that there is always a narrative and a story involved in the design. In architecture, it is always vital that the design follows a well-thought narrative which addresses all of the needs of the project, as well as outlining the intentionality of the final product. The same also applies in UI UX design, where the designer always needs a narrative to follow in all of the design process. A successful UI and UX designer is someone who can explain the story of the product in very simple terms that can be understood by anyone. Now let's talk about what do you need to learn if you want to shift from architecture to UI UX design. As an architectural designer who wants to shift to become a UI and UX designer, there are certain skills that you need to learn before applying for any jobs in the field. Although a lot of the soft skills that one learns from their architecture education becomes very handy for switching to UI UX design, there are still some hard and soft skills that needs to be learned, at least in basic levels, before becoming a UI and UX designer. The most common technical skill that needs to be learned is learning to work with softwares like Adobe XD, Figma, and Sketch. If you have learned Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, or InDesign as an architecture student, you will not have any difficulty learning the Adobe XD at all. This program is like 10 times simpler and easier to use. The whole point of learning these programs is that as a UI and a UX designer, you can use them to design all the graphics of the digital product, i.e. app or website, as well as making an interactive version of the product or an MVP. I personally mastered Adobe XD in less than a day and built a minimum viable product, which actually works really well and can demonstrate the whole point of my idea in really simple graphics. Now let's talk about how you can actually get a junior level UI UX designer job. Just like architecture or any other design field, you need to have a portfolio of your creative work for applying to any job opportunities. And this is the way that you want to present your skills to your potential employer. There are tons of great examples of UI design on websites like Behance or Pinterest, which you can get inspired from. It is also recommended that you participate in hackathons and bootcamps in order to build a more employer-friendly CV, as well as learning a lot of tips and tricks of being a UI UX designer. Now let's jump into the financial aspects of switching from architecture to UI UX design and see if this shift will actually be more attractive in terms of how much money you will be making as a UI UX designer. The salary can vary depending on the country and the city where you are looking for jobs, but for the sake of this video, I will base my numbers on London's rate. As of now, September 2022, the average salary of an architectural assistant in London is something around £30,000 per year. However, the average salary of a UI and a UX designer in London is around £40,000 a year, without considering the bonus. You also have to consider the fact that your salary will grow much higher and faster in the tech industry compared to architecture. So in terms of the financial aspects, it actually makes sense to switch to UI UX design if you are considering a shift from architecture. But if you are still looking for alternative careers to architecture, you might want to check out this video that I did before on the other ways of using your architecture education from here or the link in the description. Hope this video has helped you to understand a bit more about UI and UX design and shifting from architecture. Hope you have a great rest of today and see you in the next video.